a refrigerated warehouse, and there's not that kind of movement. The trucks usually are not as big as you would have in a conventional warehouse. They're smaller trucks to go through and make deliveries and things like that.
And this is basically frozen food, or what would be held in a cold warehouse?
I think it's frozen seafood.
Yeah.
And process-wise, they're one step ahead of where the last applicant is. They've already gotten designated as the conditional redeveloper of the site. And later on, there's a resolution on the agenda. They're coming up to the 90-day deadline for doing the agreement. We're gonna need some more time, so we're asking you to continue to the end of the year.
Landfill number 3 had been existing in the redevelopment agency for a number of years. It's not
Yes.
something new in the last, since the last 7 or 8 years that I've been on. So.
If I'm not mistaken.
No, it's set at.
It's been around longer, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
If you remember,
Red.
they came in, okay, they wanted to go through and put a power plant on it. I told you at that point in time that I wasn't sure that that is actually gonna happen, just because of the fact that the project was complicated and I didn't know whether they'd be able to get all the approvals for it. Turned out that they got the approvals for it, but they couldn't get the financing, and the governor changed his stance with regard to concerns over fossil fuel plants. And as a result of that, different things happened that made it difficult for them to proceed.
Didn't you also say maybe that this particular use is a higher rateable than a regular warehouse? Did I
It will likely have a higher charge than a regular flat warehouse would. They're charging more per square foot to store stuff there.
Because it's refrigerated,
Yeah.
So the cost of the building is a lot more.
Yeah,
And
power.
and we're not offering them any incentives, right?
Oh, I have no doubt they will ask, but we haven't offered anything yet.
Anything else?
And
No.
wait, but to be perfectly honest with Frank, they included in their application, okay, a request for a pilot.
Yeah, so they've asked.
So, that, just so that everybody knows up front, that was included in their submittal.
Okay. If I'm gonna go for a mortgage, I'm gonna ask for the best terms that I can get. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
doesn't mean I'm gonna get it, but I can ask.
And we have not had any pilot discussions with them yet.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Praxair?
Praxair was the relocation of the easement of a gas pipeline on the former NL site. After 5 years of negotiations and aggravation in agita, which the redeveloper funded for themselves and for the agency, last month the agency approved the document, the easement, relocating the pipeline, and we spent the last 2 months arguing over a schedule that's attached to it. The professionals have reached agreement on the schedule. We brought a copy for Joe to sign, and that's done, and work on that pipeline relocation will start probably within the month. They're hindered, like everyone else is, by supply chain issues on pipeline and equipment, but it looks like that will happen. That is important to happen because the development of the site by North American Properties and SSA can't happen until the pipeline starts to move.
And he said this is a gas pipeline.
Yeah, it's nitrogen inert.
It's an oxygen and nitrogen line.
It supplies the MCUA with gas, where they treat our stuff.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, number 7, resolution providing for holding of private executive meetings pertaining to litigation, personnel, contract negotiations, and property acquisition and sale. Can I have a motion to go into closed?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Robinson, will you please excuse us?
That's what makes that project so difficult and requires the special funding through the ERC process. sites, just so that you know what's going on. We'll take you a ride up, even though you probably all know the Pure site. We'll drive through the parking lot so
Yeah.
that you can see what we were talking about today. We'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, also, a few months ago, I was at a council meeting and I brought up the problems we were having in town with the pilot program for Morgan's Bluff and whether they were meeting the requirements or not. And I spoke to Mr. Dupont and you guys were there, and I understood the way the mayor and Mike were talking about it was that the council was gonna handle it, but they sent it to Mr. Baker for the pilot program, but Mr. Baker doesn't work for the council and SERA doesn't collect taxes or investigate pilot programs. So I told Mr. Baker, you know, for the little that you did, bill the borough if they don't wanna pay for it for the little bit of time. SERA will, you know, you present your bill to SERA and we'll ask the commissioners to approve it. But this has to go back to the council. They're not providing Joe Cupsh with the paperwork he needs. We don't know what, if they're paying the correct amount of taxes. There's a clause in the pilot program where if there's an escalation in the amount of money they get, or if there's an escalation in profits, more money has to go to the borough. And discussing this with Mr. Baker in an issue they had this in another town, and I forget the town it was, you said you were able to collect a significant
amount of additional money as a
Right.
result of the increased rent that was being charged.
We've
They
been
are really
hearing-
raising their
Yeah,
rates.
we've been hearing about some of the exorbitant rents that they're moving to.
Yeah.
Now, and if we're not paying attention to Morgan's Bluff, are we paying attention to Red Oak? I mean, they've gotta be taking a lot of money. Who's looking at this stuff? I mean, somebody's gotta be in charge of this in the borough, but it's not SERA. Okay, it's not in our budget. We don't pay Mr. Baker or anyone on this agency to chase taxes. We made the pilot program, the council approved it, and you need to make sure you're getting your fair share of the money.
So Joe said he's not getting the paperwork he needs.
Right.
Okay,
And we're not sure if their CFO is either.
okay, cause she indicated to me she thought she was, so
All right.
What
But
she's,
I don't know what-
even what she's getting,
it's not appropriate.
I'm not trusting it. I don't trust a company, and I've been in business a long time, I don't trust a company to say, oh yeah, this is how much we're collecting. Where's your leases? How much rents are you collecting from each apartment? I mean, this needs to be an in-depth audit.
They're required to provide an audit to the borough each year of the.
And it's been years.
That's
Is this
actually
the
what I
only
heard.
one?
We
This,
don't know.
Morgan's Bluff.
Okay, all right.
Is the pilot up for, the Neptune project?
Which project?
Neptune? That one we went to Ireland for?
Yeah.
Godforsaken place that you made me go?
No, I think that's still going.
It's still going? All right, that should be another month away. I think that's the only 3 pilots that are
Yeah,
existing.
that one is different
What about
though,
Gillette
because that was
Gillette
based
didn't get a
upon
pilot.
a percentage of the
They didn't get a
construction
No,
cost.
the original
one
I
did.
don't think
Oh, the
that
original.
has the
Original
escalators
Gillette
that
was
the rent
I
ones
think
do.
Red Oak
It's
either?
still gonna,
Red Oak,
They
I
still
know
have
that
time.
Red Oak
Just
was
discuss it.
reviewed because I think the Red Oak pilot was extended about 3 years ago.
Mhm.
I think it was extended just before Wayne left, if I'm not mistaken. And that was, reevaluated by the mayor and council at that point in time.
But do you know if it's a percentage of revenue, or is it just,
I think
mean, it's
that
before my
again,
time.
Red Oak was a percentage of construction, okay? That's how most of the power plants
So that
are.
doesn't change,
All right.
unless they built in escalators and 30 years ago, people didn't do that.
okay.
That's
But
correct,
it's a.
that one was not variable.
There needs to be a process to make sure in future
Yeah.
projects that payment in lieu of taxes is collected properly and it's adjusted in whatever way it has to
So
be adjusted.
Mike was happy to loan me a little bit, but not too much.
There needs to be a clause in our pilot program that if these requirements are not met, the pilot gets canceled.
And fined.
There are default provisions and you can cancel the pilot if they default and not
And
comply.
we have that, I think we have that in Morgan's Bluff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
yeah.
So the apartment complex is definitely behind where they should be? That,
They're behind in supplying the documentation.
Yeah, we don't know whether they're actually not giving the correct money, because
Right.
they're not supplying the documentation.
Everything might be fine or it might not. They're required to give certain documentation. Joe Cupch has indicated that he's not getting the documentation he needs, and maybe the CFO is or isn't, but we don't know.
Yeah.
So it bears, the council members should ask some questions.
I will. I'll call Denise in the morning.
I mean, we really need some forensic accounting
Yep.
on this.
There should be a regular report that would be
Not just a
provided.
report, there needs to be leases shown.
And from that audit, an overview report, so that we can take a look at that overview.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Can I have a motion to open to the public?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Chairman Jim Robinson, 11 Borough Square. Congratulate 3 new board members, bipartisan appointments. Frank, certainly you and I have not seen eye to eye on everything, and you did a good job tonight. I heard the mayor's comments the other night when you were appointed. I think she misjudged you. And I hope you'll do well. I hope she and all of us will be pleasantly surprised with what you're gonna bring to the board. I think we're all mindful of whose seat you're occupying and why you were appointed, and we're all gonna be watching. I heard your comments at the council. I was impressed with them. I think you're up to the challenge. I wish you the best. I would like to talk to you about pilots sometimes. In fact, I'd like to talk to all of you about pilots. There was a discussion today. I am interested in the status of all the pilots that you are considering talking about. Tonight, you talked about the Arsenal pilots. I remember, I didn't attend the meeting, but I listened to the tape where I guess it was 2 Augusts ago, the engineer brought up the issue of pilot for Arsenal, and at the time, Chairman, you said we hadn't discussed pilots.
Right.
Or it hadn't. So, what pilots are you talking about? What pilots are you considering? What's the status? And you know, you talked about the group on Journey Mill Road. They asked for a pilot. They did. I know they did. I know that folks out there who build warehouses know that Ceraville has a reputation when it comes to pilots and certain things. I've said before, no need to give a pilot to a warehouse. I sell commercial real estate. Warehouses are dying to get into towns. A lot of towns don't want warehouses, even warehouses that will pay full freight. So why we would be giving a pilot to a warehouse, I'm not aware of. If there are extenuating circumstances, for instance, if up front they were to build the connector road between Cheesequake Road and Journey Mill Road, maybe that's a reason. But otherwise, I don't think there is. So that's my first question is, which pilots are being thought about or talked about or considered?
The only one that's in discussions, as I mentioned earlier, is on the Trammell Crow site, and we're not at the point of making a recommendation to the commissioners, and the commissioners certainly aren't at a point of making a recommendation to the council. All the other projects would like pilots, but we have not had any discussions with them. And on Trammell Crow, you can check with the clerk. The developer submitted a pilot application to the town already. And you'll see the number that they have in that application, and that's not a number that we would recommend.
Okay, well, do you know what that number is? Can you tell us what that number is?
10%.
You want me to get that from the clerk?
10%.
10%. 10% of what the property taxes would be?
No, 10% of revenues.
Of the cost?
No, 10% of revenues.
Revenue. Okay, all right. Michael, I thank you for bringing up Morgan Bluff. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about. And you know, just to I'm sure you all know this, but just to remind everybody, every apartment complex in town has to submit those figures to Joe Kopsch, because their tax is a function of their revenue, of their income. So that's standard practice, that
This is
isn't being
the only-
done.
This is the only one that we had anything.
It's the only one there, that there's a pilot on, and we won't go into whether, you know, a while ago I said I would not bring that up, but anyway, they should be submitting it just like Winding Wood and just like Skytap, Crestview. All these folks have to submit their revenue, because they're just like billboards should have to submit their revenue, because their property tax should be based on their income. That's one of the ways that you can tax commercial property, and Joe Kopsch and I have had this discussion a number of times. I'm wondering, since you have the cogen facilities on Journey Mill Road, has that, the availability of power and steam, has that entered into any of these discussions with potential tenants, warehouse tenants there?
Not that I'm aware
No.
of, Jim. No.
It might be something you might wanna consider, it might be a benefit.
Jim, you're right, it might be a benefit. The problem that you have is based upon what the current regulations are and the way the state is enforcing the air rules, okay? The AES plant, or the Red Oak plant, as you refer to it, okay, has been shut down more this year
Yeah.
than it has been ever before.
It is one of the 5 largest polluters in the state of New Jersey.
But it has not gone through and run like it has in other years.
Okay.
And the same thing with the Florida Power and Electric site, now under a new name. It's run very infrequently, so if they
Okay.
were gonna provide steam to a warehouse and they're not running, it would be cost.
Okay, I just raised it,
Yeah.
it's something to think about, I
Yeah.
wasn't gonna comment on the merits of the Ernst Road property. Michael, did you say that Commissioner Roberts, AKA Commissioner Edwards, talked about?
Before she was a commissioner, as a councilwoman, she and another resident came and brought it to the agency's attention and asked us to.
Okay, and I don't know, Donna, if you knew that there had been studies, and they were talking about citing a senior housing that would actually have some assisted living and healthcare over there. And the money was spent on that, it rated very highly, it would've gotten a lot of federal aid. I don't know if you're aware of that when you suggested that something else be done there, but if something else.
Refresh my memory, what was?
Actually, it didn't suggest something specific, just something for us to look at it to see if something could be done.
Yeah, well, I
Go
think-
get a rate
Oh.
okay?
Yeah, that's something that we talked about a number of times over the years. I know some people were opposed to it. Dan Frankel told me that some folks were opposed to it and it wouldn't happen, but things have changed. And, you know, almost everybody in this room is getting older, and so there is gonna be the need for those kind of facilities. And if you're talking about developing it, I'd resurrect that. I'd think about that again, because a lot of work has been done on that, and that might provide a little bit more benefit than.
So, Jim,
It was housing authority.
at this,
Housing authority.
at this point, the planning board, council and planning board are gonna be looking at it, and so
Okay.
that would be your place. It's out of
All
our,
right.
we've made a recommendation that they look at it, and so that would be your place to have input.
Okay, I'll bring it up there. The other day, I went to Tappan Growler for wings, because I read they have great wings, and they do. And I drove down Lasca Avenue and looked at the affordable housing there. Very, very nice, exceeds my expectations. I think it's a credit to the community. I remember the day that I called the two Mikes when we were going through COA, said, you did a great job on that, and it exceeded my expectations, and I think it's gonna be a good service for town. I know that Sarah was involved with that
That was our property.
and brought it to this point, who's managing it, and how, if somebody wants to get in there, who do they call, is it?
Community Investment Strategies, is that the
That's
name?
correct.
Community Investment Strategies is the developer. They do tax credit finance, affordable housing throughout the state. So
Okay.
CIS is the name they go under, but it's Community Investment Strategies.
Okay,
And
and do
they'll
they
be-
have an
the
office
building-
on site if folks want, I saw a building there.
It's probably a construction office at this point, but you can reach out to them and they'll be managing it. There's even a manager's unit in the building.
Okay, all right. Just two procedural questions. If you go tour things and it is open to anyone, that by definition is a meeting, so you'd have to advertise it.
We don't have a quorum.
Quorum.
We have 2-3 people.
If it is open to or attended by, and Joe said it's open to anyone, so if it's open to or attended by, and we all know the word quorum is in the statute, it says effective majority, that's a meeting. The planning board used to do the same thing years ago, and we.
Well, Jim, I can cut you off there because we won't
No,
have
please
too many
don't cut me
people.
off.
I just, we'll have
Joe,
as many people
Joe,
as we can have.
just let Jim talk. I'll look at what you say. I believe
Yeah,
you.
and I wrote down,
believe
the
you-
tour would be open to anybody, is what Joe said, and if it's. And if it's open to, even if it's even if it is open to all the commissioners, it is by definition a meeting.
It's not open to all the commissioners.
Not at one time.
Yeah,
Are
Joe.
you gonna do this several times, David?
Oh, yes, we've
We
done
have.
multiple tours.
Yeah, done
Okay,
multiple
multiple
tours.
Cause not everybody,
Excuse me.
not everybody has
Go
your
at the
time
same
to
time.
spend on
Yeah,
these
I
things,
know
Jim.
people
We gotta
at the same
figure
time
out when
online.
to do it.
All right, that's good, that's a good thing.
I went all by
And
myself.
lastly, when I was outside, I was looking for the annual notice. Is it posted in this building? It's supposed to be posted 7 days after reorganization.
Yeah, Joan, where's it posted?
What's that?
I'm
She's
asking
asking
Joan.
Joe.
I don't think it's been posted yet.
I'm sorry?
I don't think it's
It's
been
on our
posted yet.
website, I believe, right?
When was reorganization?
Our reorganization meeting was July 7th.
Okay.
Okay, so you should,
You have one with
you
you?
should do that. There was a case I was involved with where they didn't post and meeting was declared null.
It's good.
Well,
we-
the list is.
It's good we didn't take
posted.
any, it's good we didn't take any serious official action then today, Jim.
All of your official action is serious.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Robinson?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to close the public portion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
That's my job.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Gav. Have a good
Thank
night.
you. I think, I can,
Oh, you did.
Donna Roberts.
Donna, Rob.